Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very special edition of the Good Place Bench. My name is Kristen, and I'm seated here with Fred Kent and Kathy Madden, the pioneers of placemaking. And we're in Toronto at the second annual Global Placemaking Summit, and it's really a pleasure to be seated here with both of you today. How's the summit been for you actually so far?
It's been really great. I mean, we come in and out of the summit, and all of a sudden we're talking to a group of people about something that involves the whole city, and then we're back in it, and that sort of grounds it, and it's sort of this swirl of energy and excitement from people all over the world. So it's one of those top places to get ideas, and Toronto is a great recipient and teller of work that really needs to be thought about more deeply. And so it's going on. It's a remarkable event.
Yeah, it's so nice to have all these placemakers together and sharing ideas. Has there been, now we're on day 4 of the summit. Has there been any themes or topics coming up that are particularly interesting to you? Or maybe, I don't know, if anything will surprise you or...
There are many topics, and just some overview in terms of Toronto. Is that okay to say something about?
Please go for it. Yeah.
Toronto is one of the best places we've ever been in terms of the streets and mobility. But if you just emphasize streets and mobility and not sidewalks, you're not dealing with human beings. You're dealing with vehicles. So the shift needs to now go to the sidewalks, and the idea of double loading and bringing the inside out and creating really dynamic sidewalks. And then the other thing is corners and intersections. And intersections are where either the cars control it or the community controls it. So how do you hand over the control to the community, and what do you do on each of the 4 corners, or at least one corner, to create an intersection that's all about social activity and human beings? So that's the paradigm shift. I mean, it's a big shift. And here, where you've got every corner is very heavily designed to enhance and support car traffic.
Yeah.
You are in a real difficult situation to transition away from that and add another way of thinking about a city. So you've gone to the highest level we've seen of mobility and all that stuff for traffic, but you're sunk into one of the lower levels in terms of sidewalk activity and social life.
Yeah.
So it's a big difference.
So there's a lot for Toronto to embrace.
It's also about human health, and we've done a post on 5 ways to bring humanity and social life back into cities, and one of them is put a bench on every corner. And that's a paradigm shift. It's really a metaphor for saying who controls the corner. And if the people in the community control the corner, then they can control maybe the intersection. And then they begin to be the kind of center of activity for going down each of the blocks or streets to create a larger zone or a hub of activity that centers around that intersection or the corner. The corner is the beginning, but creating all 4 corners and the entire intersection is where you can really create the kind of change that human beings need to be able to survive in a city like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the article that you both co-authored together, Put a Bench on Every Corner, I think that's been an inspiration for many people, including myself and Robin, who are behind the Good Place Bench. Yep. And so thank you for that inspiration. And what also inspired me from that article is that you expanded on that. A bench is not just a bench. And also when we're talking about seating and, street furniture also at this conference, can you expand on the idea? You touched on it just a bit now. Like, what do you mean by a bench is not just a bench? As we sit here on this bench together.
Well, a bench is really a metaphor for something much bigger. And that metaphor then begins to include what's around the bench, and then what do you put next to the bench, and how does the bench become a focal point within a larger corner? So, we will use the term, well, why don't you put an ice cream stand? And when you've got an ice cream stand and a bench, all of a sudden you've made the paradigm shift. And that's just the beginning, because now you need to go to the buildings along the side and bring the inside out of those buildings. And, each is a little addition to what the bench has started, but the bench is the catalyst for creating communities, but it's only the beginning.
It's only the beginning, the starting points. You both have traveled around the world photographing different designs of benches, different styles. Yeah, if you check out the article, we'll also link it below. Yeah, it's actually pretty wild how creative people are getting to try to facilitate that.
It's absolutely stunning how it begins the discussion. And one of the biggest problems is people are afraid to start. But if you start with something like that, then it becomes, what is the next? What is next? And so then you're starting on a track that you never could have imagined. And you can't know what you're going to end up with, because you may end up with something extraordinary. So it's just the beginning. But there's also the second thing is to bring the inside out of every building on the corner. So you're no longer looking at a blank wall. You're looking at a lot of energy in the base of the building that has also energy. So you're taking the bench and then you're adding the activity in the buildings, and then you're beginning to get something that everyone will look at, and then someone else wants it, and then you take another corner, and all of a sudden you have a community hub.
Yes.
That will be your future, the beginning of your future. So the bench is a start, but it's not the end. And if you think you're done, you're finished.
If you think you're done, you're finished. That's a great line.
Yeah.
Was there ever a bench that you came across that has stood out to you in a certain way that was?
Yeah. Yes. The other benches that we've liked, and there are some, and you may want to use some pictures that we have that you could. So there are benches that are good on sidewalks. There are benches that are good on very wide areas that with not much in between. There are benches that face different ways. There's a beautiful bench in Paris that has two seats and then a board between, and you can put your feet around it and face someone. We've seen people kissing that way, because when you're sitting on a bench like this one, it's you have to turn to talk to someone. But when you're sitting on something where there's other people right there, you are now part of a hub, kind of a series. And and you'll see images of that will be part of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so having that instead of being
right.
completely sideways like that, to have a little bit more of a curve to it, seemed to work.
And there was another bench that also blew us away that was done not by some professional designer, but by someone from Syria who just put a platform out around a tree because they couldn't put a bench out legally in New York. So they had to create a tree guard, but the tree guard was a big bench.
Okay.
That just took off. And there was one at the corner that just was the most exciting thing to see, because the corner became not a place that you sit to watch people, but a place you sit to gather.
Yeah.
And that's became where people would gather, and the conversations that erupted around it. There even is a dog was sitting on the bench, and the people were talking next to it. So it took on a whole personality that you can't forget. It's sort of like, wow, if you can do that, and then you can do this other thing. And then all of a sudden you're thinking of a bench way beyond what a bench really is.
Right.
Yeah.
Or something way beyond that.
And I love the creativity of it, and also a bit of rule breaking.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah.
a little bit of the
They didn't,
urban rebels.
right. And they didn't, they did it, and they didn't ask for forgiveness. They just did it. And then, because it was probably so good that city couldn't do anything about it. And so the biggest obstacles are city governments and people who are design training, that they think design is the answer. It's really about creating the place, not the design. And the design that helps set that up as a place is what is good design. And that's very rare. And that's why the benches that you just showed, if you use it that way, really created the social life.
Yeah.
Wow. So what advice would you share to the next generation of placemakers and people that want to shape their city?
I think you need catalytic actions that can occur in many different situations that are what you might call lighter, quicker, cheaper, that then kind of precipitate a discussion. So they're really important. I mean, the bench is one, bringing the inside out of a building. Uh, those are kinds of things that don't happen on many intersections. But if you start with the intersection and then you start with the architecture and you bring the architecture alive, not by just doing a sign on it, but by creating something outside it. So then you've begun to be the icon, not a piece of art, but the icon of uses. People are attracted to see uses, what people are doing, not just an object.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to get people in the place, then people look at people, and then that's also a very key ingredient in creating a place.
Because they're influencing each other and how
And
they're going
people
to
look to other people. They don't just look at a bar. They won't drive. People won't drive by this and look at the bench. But if there are people sitting on the bench, they will look at people sitting on the bench, and then they'll see what it is they're doing. They won't. It's very interesting. People don't realize how much they see.
Yeah.
And so by setting it up for people to see and then to watch that, because people will see that and then they'll see something else and then something else. So it'll begin to sort of leverage a next idea and then the next idea. And you don't know what you're going to end up with. And that's what magic about. That's potion.
Yeah. And also when you talk about eyesight and like looking and viewing other people, I also imagine different perspectives coming up and different perspectives coming into play, whether it's with people or even looking into nature, for example, and how it can trigger
Right.
ideas. Just to close this off, and I'm very curious for your thoughts. How do you see placemaking evolving over the next 10 years?
Placemaking could become a major political movement, which is really interesting because people who are placemakers are basically not people with egos. They're people that are trying to understand how to make places work. So that's magical. And you can't do it as an individual because no one has the talent to understand what the enormous amount of talent in a community is. And as they begin to take over responsibility for it, they begin to deliver something that's for them or for that corner or for that space. So if government, which is the biggest obstacle, they have all these disciplines that keep you from doing what you really want, let's go. And the politicians begin to be more about placemaking. They can drive outcomes because the governmental agencies have to respond to the politicians,
Right.
and to the community. So you've got this link between the politicians and the community who realize that they have a responsibility to actually help deliver for the community what will make it work. The government has to respond to the politicians, and so you can get that triangle. But if you just have citizens come and say, we want to put a bench on the corner, well, we got this rule and that rule, and you can't do it. Because it's not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get a politician and, who says, well, we'll just experiment with it and you work for me, so to speak,
Right.
telling them that, and you can fire. So that's where, it's tough because everyone around you is against you in the government. And then the designers also are a problem because they want to design the bench. But in reality, you want the bench to be sort of set up for people to use it, and then you figure out how you might modify the bench and what you might add to it, create that really dynamic corner.
Love it.
And then you're on the craft.
And then we get more benches and everybody, all these.
Because everyone now wants the corner. And so what have you done? It's not complicated. It's so it's magical.
It is.
Yeah, and we are just, we know how that happens, so we can talk about it, but we don't know what the answer is. They do. That's where the magic is.
I think that's a great way to end this conversation. And I want to thank you both for being here today and for sharing your insights with the world on benches. And I know this is a topic near and dear to both of you.
Yeah, well, Kathy especially, because she's the ultimate wisdom in this, and that she had a stroke, so she's not as, but everything she thinks comes through, as you just saw. I mean, she asks the conversation very low,
Absolutely.
but she also knows deeply what it is that makes it work.
100%. So thank you again to you both. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to link the articles that we talked about just below. And I hope you both enjoy the rest of the summit in your time here in Toronto. And looking forward to getting the Good Place bench on as many corners as we can and having great connections with people.
So one other point, you may not want to use this, but
No.
Toronto is got some of the best transportation mobility solutions, but not about people in places. And that really has to shift. It's really a car for cities, a city for cars, not a city really for people, the way it needs to be. And that's a big shift.
I hope I can pass this on to our political leaders as well to also get them a little bit excited and educated on the topic and the wide and vast benefits of it.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you.
So anything else we can do, we want to help you. And you have our posts. You can use any of our posts if you want
Lovely.
to substantiate that. Because there's a wonderful post on double loading sidewalks.
Double loading sidewalk.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it's you put you bring the inside out of the building, and then you put a whole level of activity on the edge on the street side,
Right.
and then you create these zones where the people are comfortable in being, and then you see the baby carriages come, and their babies get out, and they walk around because they're protected by the double loading, all that, and then that takes on more and more about the whole block. So you're getting started on a course where the sidewalk really is the prime asset in the community.
It's like the corridor of actually a living room sort of space.
Well, in a living room, but it's also a series of places. It's not a corridor, but you walk along, but it's also a series of places you visit on your walk. So you're not going out. You can promenade, but in the sense, you're really looking for places to stop and do it.
Yeah.
And so
we'll keep putting up the sidewalks.
It's sidewalk stupid.
Sidewalk stupid?
Yes. That's where your life is, and you better get it back.
Yes. Let's end on that amazing line, and thank you again.